Sorry. Wacht even. Hup. Kom maar bij zwaardje. Kom maar, hup. Sarah.
William Blake is considered a key figure in esotericism. A visionary artist, he transformed his experiences and perceptions into poetry and images, creating his own symbolic universe in which imagination becomes the key to unlocking the hidden. In this video, we will explore his life and work, seeking to understand the complex, mystical, and esoteric system he developed. William Blake, born in London in 1757, was a poet, engraver, and painter. His life and work were deeply marked by visionary experiences that sparked in him a lasting fascination with esoteric symbolism and mysticism. From childhood, he claimed to have extraordinary encounters. At the age of 8, he said he saw a tree filled with angels, and later he reported witnessing the apparition of his deceased brother's spirit. These experiences cemented his conviction that a spiritual reality existed beyond the material world. Blake lived during a period of transition between the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution, yet he firmly rejected both currents. He criticized the cold rationalism of the Enlightenment and denounced the Industrial Revolution, which he saw as the beginning of a dehumanizing era. Against the mechanical and materialistic vision of thinkers like Locke or Newton, he chose a mystical and highly symbolic outlook. At the age of 14, he began training as an engraver at the James Museum, a renowned craftsman connected to the Society of Antiquaries of London. During 7 years of apprenticeship, he mastered engraving, drawing, and painting techniques, gaining great technical precision and exposure to a world of symbols and archetypes that would permeate all his work. As an adult, he developed his own technique that combined engraving and painting, merging image and poetry into a single piece. He also cultivated the habit of spending long hours in bookshops, which in 18th century London served as meeting places for intellectuals, artists, occultists, revolutionaries, and mystics, spaces where, in addition to buying books, people engaged in intense debates on hidden realities and ideas. He especially frequented the shop of Joseph Johnson, publisher of authors such as Emanuel Swedenborg and Thomas Paine. Johnson quickly recognized Blake's talent, hiring him to produce engravings for his publications and inviting him to the gatherings of writers and artists he hosted. The bookshop offered a wide range of literature, but was particularly notable for its extensive collection of esoteric texts. It was there that Blake encountered the works of Paracelsus, Hermes Trismegistus, Thomas Vaughan, Plato, Robert Flood, Agrippa, and Pico della Mirandola, among others. However, the most decisive influence was Emanuel Swedenborg, a Swedish mystic who claimed to have conversed directly with angels and maintained that true reality was spiritual, while matter was nothing more than a fleeting illusion. These ideas profoundly shaped Blake, who attended meetings of the New Jerusalem Church, founded by Swedenborg's followers after his death, and was even a member of the Swedenborg Society of London for a time. For a time, Blake actively promoted Swedenborg's ideas. However, as the years passed, he began to distance himself. While he acknowledged Swedenborg's value as a visionary and explorer of spiritual realities, he believed he remained constrained by a traditional moralism that divided good and evil too rigidly. Blake aspired to something deeper. He saw human imagination as an extension of the universal creative act, a divine spark or flame. Thus, although he was
I'm an artist, not an influencer.
What?
Now some people might call this.
This stance was no small matter, as Swedenborg enjoyed great prestige in esoteric circles and discreet societies of his time. He was a key figure for 17th century Christian thought and exerted a strong influence on Swedish Freemasonry. The Swedish Rite, consolidated at the end of that century, adopted several aspects of his Christian esoteric vision, especially his concepts of the soul, heaven, and the afterlife. Even so, while this perspective had a distinctly esoteric character, it did not entirely break with the Christian tradition. In the context of the Swedish Rite, Swedenborg functioned as a bridge between religion and occult philosophy. Blake moved in circles of radical intellectuals where he crossed paths with revolutionaries and Enlightenment thinkers, an environment that reinforced his criticism of organized religion and traditional morality. His stance did not stem from atheism, but from a heterodox spirituality. He considered himself a Christian, yet interpreted that tradition in his own way. He believed that early Christianity had been a mystical religion that encouraged imagination and inner freedom, but that over time it had been distorted under the weight of dogma, politics, and materialism. To most of his contemporaries, Blake was an eccentric, and London society marginalized him for his ideas. Still, that never stopped him. He continued to develop his mythology and mystical system, always leading a modest life. In his later years, he managed to gather a small circle of disciples and patrons who recognized his visionary genius, though true recognition only came after his death when occultists and scholars of symbolism rediscovered his legacy. This trajectory has led many to wonder whether Blake actually belonged to any esoteric order or was formally initiated into the occult. There is no evidence or testimony to confirm this, yet his work and worldview reveal a deep knowledge of occult philosophy and symbolism. Some historians of esotericism have suggested that he may have had connections with Freemasonry based on his environment and the evident presence of Masonic symbols in his work, symbols that, in the 18th century, could only be known through initiation. There are no certainties, but there are striking coincidences, from the physical proximity of his training grounds to London's most important Masonic institutions, to his friendships and collaborations with known Freemasons, and his participation in the Swedenborg Society, which was linked to Enlightenment currents with strong Masonic influence. In any case, even if he was not an institutional occultist, the nature of his work is profoundly esoteric. He did not write manuals of magic or treatises on alchemy, but he created something more unique, a cosmology of his own, a vision of the world as a stage for the struggle between forces seeking to subdue the imagination and those striving to set it free. But before we continue with the analysis, I'd like to remind you that many of the paintings you'll see throughout this video are available for you to collect. In the description, you'll find a link to the William Blake collection, where you can explore his works in detail and purchase the one you like most to have in your home. Shipping is completely free worldwide, and by making a purchase, you'll also be supporting me in continuing to create videos like this one. Now, let's continue. For Blake, imagination was not merely an act of fantasy or a tool for inventing stories, but a spiritual faculty capable of connecting human beings with the infinite. He believed that ideas were made of the same mysterious substance as visions and dreams, and that if ultimate reality was spiritual in nature, only the imaginative gaze could access it. Hence his famous statement, "If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite." By this, he meant that the physical senses offer us only a limited version of reality. His thought clashed with the enlightenment of his time, which reduced knowledge to what could be measured, touched, or seen. While Enlightenment philosophers saw imagination as a secondary product of perception, for Blake it was the very foundation of existence. He envisioned the cosmos as an interconnected whole, where the human mind, the microcosm, mirrored the divine universe, the macrocosm. He summed it up in the phrase, "God is in the lowest effects as well as in the highest causes," a way of recognizing the divine spark within humanity itself. He even identified Jesus Christ with the divine imagination, calling him the divine imagination, and linking him to the creative or mercurial principle in humankind. For this reason, his theology was often considered Gnostic or Hermetic. Like the ancient Gnostics, he distinguished between a lesser god, the lawgiver bound to the material world, Jehovah Elohim, and a higher god associated with spirit, Jesus, the archetype of forgiveness and imagination. He interpreted the creation and the fall in Genesis as an allegory of a cosmic accident. Humanity, originally united with the divine, fell into matter and became confined by the perception of the senses. In his system, Christ represented the imagination and creative love that could free humanity from the prison of law, matter, and the senses. His visions of angels, demons, and biblical figures were understood as manifestations of eternal truths, what we would now call archetypes, that appear to him in familiar images, in his case rooted in Christianity. This form of spirituality brought him into conflict with official religion and Victorian morality. He criticized the repressive ethics that, in his view, stifled natural desires and undermined the life of the spirit. From this arose his dualistic vision, in which heaven and hell were not physical places or post-mortem destinies, but states of the soul and ways of perceiving reality. Heaven symbolized law, reason, and order, but also dogma, repression, and rigidity. Hell, by contrast, represented energy, creative desire, and passion, as well as subversion and chaos. For Blake, desire and energy were expressions of the divine vitality within humans, while reason was the force that could either organize them or, when misused, repress them. In his mythology, this opposition took shape in two figures: Urizen, the old god of reason and law, and Orc, the rebellious spirit of passion and revolution. The tension and eventual reconciliation between reason and imagination, order and chaos, heaven and hell, was the core of his entire body of work. He embraced the union of opposites central to Hermetic and alchemical thought, using it to construct a personal mythology that became a complex, mystical, and prophetic system. He summed it up in the now famous declaration: "I must create a system or be enslaved by another man's."
I am disabled, and I like to do things fast. And now fast, just got better. Fast, just got better.
Nieuw Robijn Quickwash. Beter tegen nare geurtjes met een heerlijke geursensatie. Nieuw Robijn Quickwash. Speciaal voor korte wasjes.
Altijd smooth. Altijd redelijk.
De tijd van wishing is voorbij. Start met beleggen en sluit je aan bij meer dan 3 miljoen andere beleggers. De Giro, everyone's investor, baby. Met beleggen kun je innig verliezen.
Blake did not set out his system in a single volume. Instead, he developed it over more than 3 decades, between 1789 and 1820, through poems, engravings, and illustrations. Along this journey, standout works include the Book of Urizen, the Book of Loss, America, a Prophecy, Europe, a Prophecy, Milton, a Poem, and above all, Jerusalem, considered one of the great esoteric works in history. To understand his work, it's important to remember that Blake never separated poetry from image. He spoke in images and painted with words. His artistic goal was to achieve a total unity in which word and form were integrated as a single living entity. Jerusalem is a prophetic work engraved on copper plates using his own technique, illuminated relief printing, in which he combined text and illustration, later hand-coloring the pages. In this book, he brought together and gave final structure to all the elements of his system. Within this symbolic universe, several characters and archetypes stand out. The Horizon embodies abstract reason, law, intellect, and authority, both religious and scientific. He represents the force that separates the mind from the imagination and the body, resembling the Gnostic demiurge associated with repression and rigid order. Orc, by contrast, is his opposite. He symbolizes vital rebellion, passion, creative desire, and the transformative impulse. Where Urizen sets limits, Orc breaks them. He is a Promethean or Luciferian figure who brings the fire of change, though without balance, he can fall into chaos. Loss is the archetype of creative and artistic imagination. A redemptive yet tragic figure, he suffers as he contemplates a broken world and seeks to restore it through his art. In his eternal forge, he shapes forms with spiritual fire. His companion Enithon represents the feminine principle of emotion. She can inspire visions but also embody repressive sexual morality and mystery. She is also the mother of Orc, linking her to the birth of desire and rebellion. Albion is the primordial man before the fall, equivalent to the Adam Kadmon of Kabbalah or the Gnostic Anthropos. He represents both universal humanity and the individual soul in its integrated state. His fall fragments him into the four Zoas, Horizon, Mos, Farmus, and Luva, or Athona, each reflecting an aspect of the human psyche. Farmus embodies the body, senses, and instinct. Athona is the spiritual facet of imagination, linked to loss. Other key archetypes include Vala, who represents the world of appearances and the veil of illusion, divine wisdom in its fallen form, and Rintra, the symbol of righteous indignation and prophetic wrath, a voice denouncing injustice without being driven by desire, unlike Orc. Together, these characters form the central cast of Blake's cosmic drama, which tells the tragic creation of the universe, the emergence of good and evil, and the hope of final redemption. In one of his most recognized works, The Ancient of Days, Blake depicts Horizon, the demiurge. The figure, leaning forward with an ambiguous expression, appears at once to be creating a real world and measuring the darkness of the abyss with a compass. With this image, Blake delivers a double critique. On one hand, of the authoritarian God of the Old Testament, and on the other, of the rationalist mindset dominant in his time. In traditional esoteric iconography, the compass represents the architect of the universe and the divine reason that orders creation. Blake, however, gives it a Gnostic and darker nuance, the demiurge who limits infinite reality, enclosing it within the geometry of the material. Horizon's hunched posture conveys the sense that his creative act is also an act of descent. There is no grandeur or triumph, but weight and gravity, as though the spirit were falling into matter, an inversion of celestial values. From this perspective, the Ancient of Days is not a representation of a benevolent creator god, but of a principle which, in its effort to impose order, ends up repressing and confining what is alive, spontaneous and creative. Even the golden halo surrounding him is not the full divine light, but the light of reason that only appears to be truth, yet remains incomplete, for the circle is left open. For Blake, order and reason were necessary, but they had to serve spiritual vision and creative imagination. This is why the work embodies the tension between reason that illuminates and reason that imprisons. In summary, William Blake was a complete creator, poet, painter, mystic, and esoteric thinker whose entire body of work can be understood as a symbolic system of his own making. Influenced by Hermetic tradition, Kabbalah, and Gnosticism, he reinterpreted these currents within a Christian aesthetic to deliver a transformative message. Imagination as the divine spark, the world as the great work of art of the spirit, and salvation as a new way of seeing reality. His most important works function as true treatises of occult philosophy, filled with archetypes and universal myths, the fall of the soul, the struggle against oppressive forces, and redemption through inner light. Although his imagery was close to Christian mysticism, his thought was deeply linked to Western esotericism. At the height of rationalism, Blake emerged as a solitary, self-taught initiate, capable of reimagining ancient symbols to give them new meaning. His greatest gift was to take that esoteric legacy and recreate it not as an academic, but as a myth maker, shaping his own symbolic narratives in images that act as living symbols and bearers of prophetic messages. His esoteric Christianity placed creative imagination at the center and opposed the dominant rationalism of his era. While rejecting the cold, mechanistic thought of his time, he did not fall into irrationality. He saw a higher synthesis, a poetic reason capable of recognizing and reconciling opposites. For him, awakening from material illusion meant cleansing the doors of perception to behold the infinite. He saw imagination not as a passive pastime, but as a sacred faculty through which the soul could create, redeem, and access the divine within itself. Too heterodox for religion and too independent for organized esotericism, Blake is now considered one of the most influential figures in modern esoteric art. He was the heir of the enlightened occultism of the 17th century, seeking to unite magic, alchemy, Kabbalah, and religion, and at the same time, a forerunner of many forms later developed in contemporary esotericism. It is no coincidence that the pre-Raphaelites, symbolists, and Victorian occultists revived his work, seeing in him a natural initiate, someone who, in solitude, managed to lift part of the veil of Isis. Thank you for watching until the end, and don't forget you can find his paintings available at inspiragio.com. See you in the next video.
Leonardo da Vinci is believed by many to have been the most talented individual who ever lived.
He was an absolute experimenter. You can see that across not only his painting but all areas.
Drawings of helicopters and submarines, cannon, and anatomy.
He was a universal man. He was greatly interested in science, though he only devoted part of his time to art.
But while his greatest legacy remains in his art, we're still unearthing the secrets of how he worked.
Leonardo really tried to make painting do everything. He wanted movement, he wanted light, he wanted colour, he wanted psychology. He tried to put so much into a painting.
We're still uncovering the fascinating discoveries he made, the mysteries of what happened to his masterpieces long after he died.
Modern scientific methods offer great opportunities to know a lot more about Leonardo's technique.
One always imagined that he was feverish, constantly changing, rather fretful painter.
Leonardo crashes forms together, and that influenced almost everything.
Art lives from constraints, it dies from freedom.
Leonardo was born at a time when the House of Medici was ruling over Florence. This eminent banking family would eventually produce 4 popes. But their rise to prominence had occurred when Cosimo de' Medici came to dominate the region that young Leonardo was born into. And it was Cosimo's son Lorenzo who would be crucial in establishing Leonardo's legacy.
We don't know much about how Leonardo began. We know he was born in 1452 in a little Tuscan town not far from Florence.
He was actually an illegitimate child and was brought up by his paternal grandfather. But his father was quite a successful lawyer in Florence, and that drew the young Leonardo to Florence.
He was apprenticed to Andrea Verrocchio. Now, he is really an artist in Florence, did painting, sculpture, everything, bits of engineering. Seemingly, Leonardo's father was very much the son who's pretty good at this painting, drawing thing, we can take him on.
In the case of Leonardo, because he was a genius in his own sense to reason, he must have been a genius when he was young. So he was obviously recognized as a prodigy.
Core is the key word to mix classic art.
sorts of inspirations. He set this into versatility for Leonardo. He also not just found lesser known artist, Antonio Correggio, who did wonderful anatomical figures which inspired Leonardo. He looks to the great Florentine tradition of the painter Masaccio, who he mentions, the sculptor Donatello, who he mentioned. So he saw himself in that Florentine tradition of anatomy perspective.
He was quite a talented student, and he worked with the master on the baptism of Christ.
There's a story in Vasari that he helps paint one particular scene, and Rocky said it's so great, I'm never going to pick up a paintbrush ever again.
It's possible that a statue made by Verrocchio of the biblical David may have been modeled on the young Leonardo, as well as the angel in the painting Tobias and the Angel, attributed to Verrocchio. Leonardo may have even worked on this painting himself, specifically the fish held by Tobias.
Verrocchio was the time there was some very talented
Emma on your app.
in Verrocchio's studio, and they actually included Botticelli and Perugino.
By the time he reached 20 and he went into the guild, he was setting up with his own studio, and his father helped him out with that, but he still kept this very close relationship. That was really how his artistic life was formed, was in the studio setting with him.
Following such a
But that's all it was, so I gave it up.
times, an attempt had been made on Lorenzo de' Medici's life in the infamous Pazzi conspiracy. Lorenzo's brother was killed, but he survived. The conspirators were sent court and executed. Leonardo was found the hanging body of one of the collaborators.
Jesus.
At around the same time, Leonardo received one of his earliest commissions in Florence, the Adoration of the Magi, but he would leave this painting unfinished.
Leonardo was a perfectionist when it came to art, and he sometimes left works unfinished, and in some cases he abandoned pictures.
I think he aimed at finishing pictures, and some of them did get finished, but the problem is along the way. You can always see another way of doing it. You can see a different musical composition, a different emotional context, a different landscape. So it's very difficult in that circumstance to say, yeah, I've really finished with this picture.
He's always on the move, to Venice and to Rome, and then back to Florence and back to Rome, and then he himself put about this idea that he didn't finish things because he could then say, well, imagine what it'd be like if you didn't finish. And that was, I think, common a bit.
You know, a clear sense of finished pictures. The last supper was finished. One reason was if you might finish something, quite a number of paintings are finished, but it was a difficult job getting to that point.
Leonardo was now a part of Lorenzo de' Medici's court, and after surviving the Pazzi conspiracy, Lorenzo's power in Florence only grew. But he needed to secure peace with the powerful Duke
Jesus.
Sforza. Leonardo would travel to Milan to help achieve this goal.
Leonardo was working at the court in Milan, and his employment gave him the time and money to pursue his very wide interest both in the arts and sciences. So it was a very important time for his work.
Somebody like the Duke of Milan rang you up and said, hey, why don't you come and work for me? Then, you said, okay, you say no to people like that.
He probably lived a very varied life. You don't have eyewitness descriptions, but he was doing this and that within the court. He complained often that the court duties were getting in the way of his quest for fame, to do immortal works, as it were. So he very diverted from project to project.
Oh, sorry.
Civil engineering, architecture, stage design, very varied. I think it suited him quite well, because he's got this restless intellect and restless creativity.
Ludovico Sforza was obviously impressed, and Leonardo would work in the city for almost 2 decades. It would be Sforza who would commission The Last Supper.
Ludovico employed Leonardo for 19 years, so not without signs of frustration. He writes to the secretary saying, get Leonardo going and get him on to the next wall. And there was that element of frustration. And I think all the patrons, including Ludovico, knew they'd got someone amazing. He was a great virtuoso.
his most dramatic portraits, The Lady with an Urn.
She became a bourgeois family in Siena, but obviously a very nice dad, I think, because she was taught all the things that her brothers were taught. She was taught maths and Latin and all that sort of stuff.
Da Vinci started painting her portrait in 1489, and she was quite an unusual character for the time. She hosted almost what we could now describe as a salon, so all the intellects of the day from Milan would meet with her, and she would invite people to stories.
Ellen was I'll say that firmly because it doesn't make sense as everything else. The ermine is a symbol of purity that wouldn't go across her body, it would rather be captured by a hunter. It was also a symbol of moderation. You may think for the Duke's mistress, symbol of purity is slightly anomalous, but that's how it worked in the Renaissance. So it must be an ermine.
Ludwika was awarded the order of the ermine. Ermine became also his nickname. So that's how I came to the subject of the painting through his mistress.
De snelpakkers van KPN zijn er weer. Tijdelijke topdeals die je echt niet wil missen. Nu bij je tweejarige KPN internet- en tv-abonnement een 55-inch Philips Ambilight TV cadeau. Pak hem snel op kpn.com/snelpakkers.
Als een vakantie je hart raakt, zie je het in je ogen. Nu open air, met open armen verwelkomd in de open lucht.
7-Eleven, altijd overal.
Leonardo is only believed to have completed 4 paintings of women throughout his career. After his death, 2 of them, La Belle Ferronnier and the Mona Lisa, would end up in the Louvre, but we're not completely certain who were the sitters for these portraits. A third, the Ginevra di Benci, took a long time to finally be accepted as a Leonardo. It is the portrait of Cecilia Gallerani, the lady with an ermine, that would have the most eventful history, and thanks to modern science, would continue to give us insight into the workings of a genius.
There are 3 classes of people. Those who see when they are shown, those who do not see.
Leonardo da Vinci died in Amboise in the Kingdom of France on the 2nd of May, 1519. The paintings that he had taken with him there now reside on the Louvre in Paris. But he left behind a whole plethora of works, both finished and unfinished, that would eventually be scattered all across the world.
We're just beginning later 15th century to get artists recognised as kind of intellectual audiences. We're beginning to get what I call the super artists, Raphael, considerably younger, Michelangelo, a bit younger, who were becoming huge figures in their own right. And some of the Italian courts were beginning to accommodate this new brand of rising artists.
The 3 titans of the Renaissance era, Raphael, Michelangelo, and Leonardo, had such a profound impact that their works became treasured in a way unlike artists before them. And Cecilia Gallerani, the woman captured as the lady with an ermine, owned a rare portrait completed by Leonardo, which would endure the most perilous journey of all before finding its new home in Poland.
said, I can lend it to you, but it's not a good light. This is not the painter's fault. I've changed a great deal in the intervening years, so you can be pretty sure that it was with and founded Cecilia herself until her death. What happens to it then, we simply don't know.
For the first 300 years, we don't know but it was bought in about 1800 by a Polish prince, Adam Czartoryski. Purchased it in Italy.
The young Princess Adam Jerzy goes on a tour with his brother to Sicily. The brothers spend their time acquiring artworks, among them the famous Raphael and the Leonardo da Vinci painting. They knew that it was a Leonardo, but they didn't know who the painting was of.
When the picture was in the collection of Isabella Czartoryski, they put an inscription on it. It was certain at that time saying La Belle Fronière Leonardo da Vinci, so she got the right artist long ago. It's incredibly innovatory how that painting works. You think of Mona Lisa as very novel, but this is very novel as well. She's there and she's looking sideways and smiling. She's smiling at what is drawing her attention. I think it's almost certainly the Duke. So there's a kind of triangular relationship. There's us looking at her, she's looking at the Duke. So you can imagine that certainly the person who she's glancing at and smiling slightly is the Duke. And that is incredibly novel to build in this other presence in painting which is implied.
The painting had arrived in Poland, where it resides today. But in the intervening years, it travelled all across Europe as its owners attempted to protect it. The November uprising of 1830 meant that Isabella Czartoryska had to flee Warsaw, taking the lady with an ermine with her. The next time it was seen was in Paris, at the home of Adam Czartoryski. However, it had to be hidden in the basement as the Franco-Prussian War commenced. It returned to Warsaw in 1876, where it remained until the outbreak of the First World War, when the Czartoryski family took the painting, along with the rest of their collection, to Dresden.
When Hitler invaded Poland, the Leonardo was seized from the Czartoryski and taken back to Berlin.
In 1939, just the atmosphere was quite jolly. Things were looking very good, but nobody was expecting what was about to happen. From the west, Germans come, from the east, Russians come. The collection was moved to Sieniawa, which is 16 kilometers from here. The palace in Sieniawa, it's plundered by the German army, but before that, collection was moved here. I'm not exactly sure where it was hidden, but I suspect it might be the secret room behind the library. SS come in and steal the collection. The Gestapo moves in and takes over one wing of the palace. And as war continues, the village of Belkinia is witness to horrific things.
They went to Berlin to the Kaiser Friedrich Museum. It was very unfortunate Gauleiter of Berlin, Frank, decided that he wanted it.
He then goes on the wall of the office, and in 1945, at the end of the war, he goes almost on the run with it, takes it to Silesia to his country ground, but the men return, find it, and bring it back to the Czartoryski Museum.
Ray Leonin has an amazing status within Polish culture. We know that Isabella greatly admired the Renaissance and saw herself as a kind of new Renaissance figure around about 1800.
I think it's got a huge totemic value in many partly because not many countries have, it's one of 6 places where you can find a Leonardo, but also because it's been through so much, as indeed has Poland. So I can see why people would identify very strongly with the sufferings of that picture.
It's been on postage stamps and so on. So, this particular picture, Leonardo, has sort of been installed within Polish culture. It's become a Polish picture in a very profound sense.
The lady with an ermine now takes pride of place in the Czartoryski collection. And recently, it's given up some more of its secrets, thanks to some revolutionary technology which has shed new light on Leonardo's way of working.
Modern scientific techniques offer great opportunities to look under the surface of paintings. So we know a lot more about Leonardo's technique and what paintings originally must look like.
Well, there part this shows that lots of things from the lower layers. Now we knew that Leonardo was a manic fiddler with paintings, he kept altering them and so on. And what this has shown is that the alterations are even more extensive than we suspected.
It's been shown recently that the background of the painting is now black. It was originally a bluish grey, with a darker area of bluish grey where it was painted.
The yearning has always been black, because it's a bit more difficult to see than pastel cut paint. One of the most striking things that the layer method has come up with is the interlace pattern. We know that Leonardo loved these interlace patterns, these knots independently. You can see a whole lot of interlace on her costume you couldn't previously see. What that method has done is to extend something which you could already see in other paintings.
Over the centuries, experts have had to piece together Leonardo's body of work. In total, he only left behind around 20 or so paintings, many of them unfinished. He's believed to have approached every single work differently, and as more paintings become accepted as canon, we've learned more about the amazing techniques he used. And his incredible manuscripts show the artistic breakthroughs that he made throughout his career.
Leonardo looked at how light behaved in nature, and he was able to think about two aspects of it. One is tone, that's to say, where does it exist on a scale of black to white, in grey tone, as it were. And he also thought about colours and how they related to that scale.
He had to say those 4 colours or 6 colour theory, which was effectively take anything using what we would now call the primary colours, first black, white, and bottom of green, which he thought was the primary colour for reasons that
You look at Cecilia Gallerani, the video, and you can see both the individual colours are singing out in their proper notes, but they're also part of a unified pattern of light and shade.
Why does the eye see a thing more clearly in dreams than the imagination when awake?
One of the more notable features of painting is the way the light behaves. Leonardo talked about light hitting things, he talked about percussione. So where the light hits at different angles, it makes different effects. And the percussione then rebounds. So if you look under her chin, you've got this rebound of light back into the shadow, and under her hand as well. Leonardo's a great pioneer of this technique.
But despite all his remarkable insights and achievements, even the great Leonardo doubted his own ability at times.
I have offended God and mankind because my work didn't reach the quality it should have.
In a sense, his ambitions are then and they show renting this new focus and finished paintings. So at the end of the day, he finished the world's most famous painting, perhaps the second most famous painting, The Last Supper, and the world's most famous drawing of the Vitruvian Man. So that's not bad.
De tijd van wishing is voorbij. Start met beleggen en sluit je aan bij meer dan 3 miljoen andere beleggers. De Giro, everyone is an investor, baby. Met beleggen kun je inleg verliezen.
Oh.
there are people that don't like me, and I accepted it years ago. I'm too sensitive, I'm too opinionated, I'm not manly enough, but I found a way to express myself, and it's a blessing. Skateboarders aren't meant to be confined, contained, or tethered to anything. We perceive things in a way that doesn't make sense to other people.
Your favorite baseball player is the guy that gets home run or scores for your team, but your favorite skater is always a little bit of cult of personality who you like the skaters. Max checks the boxes for like admiring a pro skater.
Good choice.
It's just incredible. You see someone pursuing a passion, building a space it's so cool.
Johnny's just a genuine person, genuine skater, he's a genuine surfer, he's a genuine bike rider. If I had another son 30 or 40 years ago, I'd have wanted to be like him.
I don't take any credit for who Max is as a person and what he's done with his life because he did it all himself. I mean, he worked really hard, hour after hour after hour skating or with the motorcycles. But I think he saw me working really hard too, and he was like, you know, that's what my mom does. She works hard, and he works hard.
Leaving my house in 5 or 10, getting gas, and heading to you. Okay, man. See you soon. Okay, cool. Alright, bye. With 4Q, it's like, I like my company, I like its name, you know, custom conditioning. Like conditioning means like changing the way something looks, right? Or, you know, softening it or just changing it. Because, you know, I start with that frame and then I get a motor and sometimes the motor's in pieces and then I get wheels and I put this thing together and then I make parts and paint it. It's just me. And there's dog hair on every shirt that I send out, you know, like I used to try to like pick it off and I was like, it's kind of part of the vibe. I really had to learn it on my own and do it on my own, and it was not popular. I don't come from a biker family. I had to work a little bit harder, I think, to kind of find my way around it.
Well, first of all, it's all DIY, right? And of course, skating is a total loner trip. We all started skating, we were, you know, alone. We had friends here and there, but I mean, really, skating is all about you and your board. And that transfers to whatever you do the rest of your life. And the same thing, like I used to spend 8 hours like trying a stupid trick when I was a kid. I'm sitting in my world by myself with my craft, doing what I do. And so to see it's the same thing. It's just him, his tools, and his bikes.
This is probably number one, probably the first thing I painted. People will be like, oh, you learned how to paint in school. And like a painter will be like, I learned in the shop from my dad. Well, I just learned to go somewhere in the evenings and like learn about materials, but in that class it was heated heat and it like sucked the air down and sucked the paint around the tank. Painting. I went out into my driveway in the middle of winter and I got this metal flake stuff. I painted the tank, you know, it's like 50 degrees out, just terrible paint weather, maybe 40s. And I covered this whole tank in silver metal flake and I would run it into the house in front of my oven at my old house and I would like carefully put it there and working on it all and I'd go to like tape out the design and when I peel the tape, huge chunks of the metal flake just come off like in a skin. I saved them forever because it looked so cool. I'm not embarrassed to have this as the first one. It's pretty basic, but I actually love like basic traditional jobs anyway. really slow, like the way I build a bike or paint anything, it takes me twice as long for sure. So I just want to be able to do that at my own speed and not feel, I don't even know if not feel judged is the right word, but just to be able to be comfortable.
Bij Basic Fit sporten we allemaal om ons goed te voelen.
Skateboarding, and we never depended on someone else for our ability to do what we love to do. It was just us and our thing.
Dan werkt het ook niet.
Walnut Creek, when my dad moved there, he heard it was the cheapest place in the East Bay to buy a house, which it was. I think he bought the $30,000 house. We literally lived by the creek in Walnut Creek, but you know, I was dealing with so many jocks, being a skater and all that stuff that like I just didn't like it there. There was none of that when I went to the city with my mom.
My whole family
Walking
was
away from
from
Florence.
Pittsburgh, and I was really close to them. The kids were really close to them, and so I wanted to stay there. But his dad left and came out here and remarried, and it took me a little while to get myself out here. And all I knew was home was going to be where my boys were. That's where I needed to be. So right now, this piece is on my loom, and I'm was really into doing like this coral color with this really, really deep wine color. One of my favorite things is like where you can see it go from white to like the violet and then almost to black. But right now, I'm about to put a hem in here and start weaving this. And downstairs below is the cartoon for it. It's basically, I call it my AI guy. It's like a little robot. So just fun, just really fun to do.
Both have that thing is alone, deal with your thoughts, recognize your emotions, and you know, lay it into a gas tank or sanding something or her weaving something. It's one of the most relatable traits I have with my mom, like a sensitivity.
This is my brother and her and I, and then this is just kind of one of her and I way early on. He was cool, man. I mean, he was like in the punk, and then he just kind of like reckless, you know, just got in a bad motorcycle accident, lost the use of his arm, but he always battled with addiction, and they were so damn close. Like, honestly, kind of says it all on the little off to the side. I know she misses him so much that I kind of make her talk to me about it a little bit.
My son, and then, you know, you just need to then be able to say, well, what do I have in my life that is really, besides now, what do I have that I can really pour myself into?
Splittercell gegen Deutsche Bahn, Sicherungspatrouille, doch ich bin getan. Action, Blaulicht und Strafverfahren, mit ein bisschen Farbe, aber das ist normal. Wir jumpen Fences in Nike Tech, während ihr im Club eure Teile flasht.
I mean, when you have a huge sorrow in your life, I think you have to say, where's my joy? You know, where can I find my joy and get back into, you know, a reason to live. You know, you could just as easily say, well, fuck it. I lost my son and I don't care about life anymore. So you have to define all the people that you love, that you really care about, that make you want to live, and the things that you love to do that give you a reason to live too. After the initial room that I rented in Oakland, I pretty much always lived in warehouses. And Phoenix Ironworks was such a unique place because the ceilings were 40 feet high. The walls weren't solid. Like in the wintertime, the wind would just go blowing in it. It was freezing. You know, I'd cook dinner, you know, make pasta dinner or something, and I'd have fingerless gloves on.
When we lived in West Oakland, you know, you imagine this white family moves into a black neighborhood and they live in my mom said 40-foot ceilings, it's 60-foot ceilings, this big thing. You got a salvage yard on one side and an anarchist piano mover on the other side, and behind you is the whole foundry. Just all day, bang, 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 you know, throughout the night, everything. The first days, there were bottles thrown at our house, you know, kill Whitey and all this shit. I mean, straight up, I was scared in West Oakland. Like, you know, I walked out of the house one day and the dude just put his pistol to my head. And he held it there and he looked at me and I was a young teen. And he just wanted to see what I was gonna do.
I wouldn't call it a house. It was a warehouse. It was raw. You know, we started to build enough that, you know, I could have a kitchen and a bedroom. You know, after that, he started to build a ramp, and he had a lot of friends that helped him do it.
Here's our ramp in the Phoenix Ironworks warehouse when we were building it. All stolen wood. We didn't even have walls up in the house. The ramp came first, and then the rooms came second.
You go to the place early on, and you were just so blown away. And I hate to like make it sound so base, but you're like, how the fuck is your mom so cool? You know, you're dealing with like parents that don't support you, or you know, you're coming from a place where like at that time, you know, my father stopped. We stopped talking because I quit school to be a professional skateboarder. And you're coming from this place of like parents that don't support you. You walk into this beautiful, welcoming house where she's totally supporting her son's passion, like giving the greater area of their entire home to this ramp, and you're just blown away.
I can't imagine us not. I mean, there was never a time when I would think, like, I started skating, Max and his brother started skating, and it's like Pinto station wagon, you know, 2 kids and their mom or whoever, their friends, you know, bail out of the car, run to the dish, start skating. I mean, it was a part of my life too, because it was a way of being with them. You know, I wasn't, I was goofy Mongo foot, so, you know, you'd hear the wheels like coming down the street, like, you know, it'd be loud, like 4 or 5 kids skating down here, you'd hear the boards drop, and then, you know, they'd come in here and they'd just skate their hearts out.
Ja, dan is ze ook heel erg. Maar ze moeten nog een weekje bij jullie blijven. Dankjewel, mam. Het ziet er even voor nog een week. Dat zijn vakantiediscounters. Die snappen vakantie. Wat een hele vaak voor die kikkers.
Hier, jongen. Natterman helpt. Hier, opa. Natterman helpt.
Nieuw. Natterman Hedera. Slijmoplossend bij vastzittende hoest. Natterman. Al meer dan 100 jaar effectief bij iedere hoest. De meeste games speel je bij Casino. Het grootste online casino van Nederland. Ja, pak die kans.
If I can do 30-foot backside Smiths and 10-foot method airs, I would. I miss it. I love it.
I don't want to put a label on where you can do tricks, but he does the trick, like if it's a kickflip, indie, he won't like lunge. He's not like, lunge tray, throw it back under. He's just like, to the feet, it's done, it's back in. He comes out of his tricks and gets into his tricks really sick.
He was super quiet, pretty shy, but when he skated, spoke volumes. So that's where he was. And fucking it was incredible.
Hi, Vicky.
He stops, turns, he looks back at the city that has just condemned him to be burned alive. He can see the towers
hundreds of them rising like stone fists into the Tuscan sky. The Bargello, the tower of the Cherokee family. The tower of the Donati, his enemies, who at this very moment are ransacking his house, seizing his books, his furniture, the possessions of his wife and children. Smoke rises from somewhere in the city. Another feud, another vendetta, the eternal Florentine sport. His name is Dante Alighieri. The year is 1302, and he is 36 years old. 2 years ago, he was one of the 6 priors who governed the city, the highest office a Florentine could hold. He was a celebrated poet, a cavalryman who had fought in battle, a husband and father. He owned property, he had a name. Now, he owns nothing. The sentence came down in March, permanent exile, all property confiscated. If he ever sets foot in Florentine poetry again, he is to be burned at the stake. He is not a murderer. He is not a thief. His crime is being on the losing side of a political coup engineered by a pope who wanted to devour Tuscany. He turns away from the city. He begins to walk. He does not know it yet, but he will never see Florence again. For the next 19 years, he will wander northern Italy, dependent on the charity of nobles, sleeping in borrowed rooms, eating borrowed bread. He will taste, as he'll later write, how salty is the taste of another's bread, and how hard the path to go up and down another's stairs. This should be the end of his story. A footnote, a casualty of a forgotten feud in a minor Italian city. But in the darkness of exile, the broken man will do something extraordinary. He will build a new world, a complete, rational, terrifying, and beautiful universe where justice is absolute, where every sin has its precise punishment, where love moves the stars. He will write it not in Latin, the language of scholars and priests, but in his own Tuscan tongue, the language of merchants and mothers. He will populate his 3 kingdoms with popes and prostitutes, emperors and usurers, saints and suicide victims. He will place his enemies in hell and damn them forever in poetry that will outlive every institution that destroyed him. The poem he will write is called, simply, The Commedia. This is the story of how it was made. And it all begins in a city of towers and blood, a city at war with itself. This isn't the Florence of tourist postcards with its marble gleaming sunlight. Picture instead a medieval fortress city, stone towers, hundreds of them, soaring 100 feet into the air. Each tower is a family stronghold, bristling with battlements. When the feuds erupt, and they erupt constantly, arrows rain down from these heights. Boiling pitch is poured onto the streets below. Barricades go up, blood runs in the gutters. This is Florence in the year of Dante's birth, 1265. A city so violent that a single broken wedding engagement in 1215 plunged it into generations of blood feud. Buondelmonte de Buondelmonti was murdered at the foot of the Ponte Vecchio for jilting his fiancée. The Buondelmonti family swore vengeance and aligned with the Pope. Their rivals, the Amidei and Uberti, turned to the Holy Roman Emperor. And just like that, Florence was divided between Guelphs and Ghibellines, names imported from German dynastic feuds. But here, in these narrow streets, they meant life or death. But Florence was also becoming fabulously wealthy. Florentine bankers financed kings. The gold florin became the international currency of Europe. Wool merchants and silk traders built fortunes. This was a city where feudal aristocrats, whose power came from land and bloodline, were being challenged by a new class. Bankers, guildmasters, ambitious men whose power came from money. The political conflict mapped onto this economic tension. Ghibellines were the old, landed nobility. Guelphs were the new mercantile elite who saw the Pope as a useful counterweight to imperial power. Dante's family was minor nobility, moderately wealthy, respectable. His father was a moneylender. When Dante was 7, his mother died. When he was 18, his father followed.